Welcome to the Fresh and Fired Up podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Marshall, here to help you function at your best in health, fitness, and life. Joined by my amazing co-host, the wild, wonderful Haley Pindle. Let's get fired up.
Well, that's my favorite intro ever.
That was a gooder.
That was good. I like the lead up, how Haley Pindle,
I was doing my announcer voice, and I was thinking about this when we were listening to my family was watching the baseball game. I was listening because, of course, I was doing dishes and cleaning up and tasking. Big surprise. But because I was listening to the announcer voices, I was like, could you imagine being married to one of these guys? Like the announcers, you'd be like, hello, wife. Can you get my breakfast on the table, please?
Oh my gosh. Or, or those auction people we got $50 here. Oh gosh.
Just do that voice all the time. That would be awful. Oh my goodness.
I don't think they do that all the time, but yeah. But you're super tired today. Tell us where you're at.
No way. You were the one who said you were in a quirky mood. Don't pin this on me.
I am. I'm not. I wasn't in a quirky mood. I am in a quirky mood.
Oh, you are in a quirky mood. You guys are in for it today because Haley is just on fire.
I think my jokes are going to be on fire today. So I'm going to be, yeah.
I hope there is some good jokes and hopefully a good story too. A story or two.
There's going to be lots of stories.
So when we showed up this morning, Haley's like, how are you feeling? I'm like, I'm tired. One of my kids was up a couple times in the night and, at that hormonal phase, as well as just got up and did my 5:30 a.m. workout anyways. And so I was pretty much ready for nap time before we even started the show. I'm looking at my watch. I'm like, what time is it?
You've lived a whole life before 9 a.m. But we're going to get into some real good tips because, Emily, if you do this every day, what's going to happen?
Going to get burnt out, probably.
That's right, which is the topic of the next series that we're doing.
Yeah, we're doing a sweet series starting out with a little bit on burnout, which we did talk about a few episodes ago with Dr. Suzanne Bober with her book, Burnout Rewired. So go check out that episode on YouTube, Spotify, and or Apple. Make sure you subscribe to all those channels and share them with your friends. Right, Haley?
Absolutely.
Yes. But this episode, we're going to be coming at it from a little bit different angle. And I want you to think about if you've ever felt like you were working really hard. I have definitely felt like this. I've gone through phases where I'm like, man, I am putting in the hours. I'm putting in the reps. I am being consistent. I am being super disciplined. And I feel like nothing's working. I feel like my body's not responding. I still feel like a ball of stress. I don't currently feel like that, but I have had phases where I felt like that. Definitely. And you start to get to the point where you're like, okay, I feel like I'm doing everything right. And I've definitely done this with nutrition where I'm like, I'm eating super clean and I'm doing everything right, but I'm still feeling exhausted and my hair is falling out and my skin sucks. And now I'm losing motivation and starting to wonder, is this just me? My body just sucks. What's going on? Have you ever felt like that?
Absolutely.
You're younger than me, though, and you don't have any kids.
I know. My gosh, that's going to be a new challenge for me, and I'm super not ready for it yet, but I will be. When my life becomes a little less chaotic, I'm like, you know what? I need something to make it chaotic, and then that's when we're going to be like, let's have 4 children. No, we're not.
Yeah. You should have 8 probably.
It's going to depend on how the first one goes. And it's it's either going to be addicting and be oh, we need to do more of this. Or it's going to be I'm so just wiped. But we'll see. Life's an adventure. We'll see when we get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point, I have definitely felt like that for sure. And I think we can feel really in that lazy realm too, especially if you're a high achiever, high performing woman. You're I need to be doing everything all at once. And then if you take a rest day, if you maybe say no to a few clients or maybe scale back on your workload, you're oh, am I just being lazy? Should I be doing better? I'm not where I want to be, right? To your point of oh, I feel like I'm doing everything right, but nothing's happening. That fallacy of fairness kind of comes in too, where some of my clients too have that, because a lot of the people that I work with is in period recovery, and that's a long process. It takes a lot of time. And so the fallacy of fairness kind of comes in where it's like, Susie down the street, here's Susie again. Susie down the street got her period back in like a month, and I'm on month 3 and I still haven't got my period back. And it's like, well, sometimes life is just not fair and just, and you kind of have to let go of the timeline because you're on your own journey and not look at Susie down the street because it's like she's got so many different things going on. Maybe she's unemployed. She doesn't have a job. She's readily available for food. She has all the time in the world to like dedicate herself to this process or, who knows, right? It's just we kind of get hopped up in the timeline. And I definitely felt that through my 20s so much. Career-wise, health-wise, relationship-wise, like I'm not where I want to be, right? And then you feel like, "Oh, why is Susie down the street farther ahead than me?" Which kind of feels
Susie.
defeating. Feels so defeating, but everything eventually, if I've learned anything, is if you keep putting in the work and that compounding effect that takes place, it's eventually gonna work out. Just you have to let go of the timeline and the expectation that you have.
Yeah, the timeline is huge for sure.
Mhm.
And the wondering, I think the wondering of, is this working? Because most of all, people, I believe, anyways, that people are really struggling with these unanswered questions in their mind. They're asking questions like, why am I tired all the time? Like, why am I tired all the time? Or maybe they're not sure what the signs are. Am I burnt out? Or am I just lazy, like you referenced? Or why do I feel like I have no motivation and I see it seems like other people do? Or why does everything feel harder for me or harder than it used to? That can be a big one as you get older. I've been finding that with injury recovery. I'm like, man, why? Sorry, injury recovery is what I was trying to say. I've been finding, why is this taking so much longer? So sometimes it's that comparison to others, sometimes it's within ourselves. I think that is huge because you are going to be at a different stage and phase. And then looking at it and going, how do let's say you do identify, I am exhibiting signs of burnout. How do I recover from this? And how long is it going to take? And am I going to be losing progress? You spoke to that. And I think that's really fear based. What to do about that? I would say reframing. Reframing, we've talked about this quite a bit, and I think it's easy to say it, but then it's a whole other thing to implement it and go, "Okay, well, how can we reframe this?" Because what's happening is your body is not broken, it's adapting to chronic stress. And when you are in that, we've talked about it before, stress in and of itself is not always the problem. It's how we're responding to it and how we're adapting to it. So, it's very rare that someone who's in this high performance category, which is typically the type of people who would seek out this type of content because they're wanting to learn and grow and get the strategies. Often the person who's actually lazy is not actually trying to make any change. They're just staying where they're at. They're not necessarily learning things. I think that's pretty common. But if you're in that high performing category where you're like, okay, I want to do better, I have goals set, I want to figure out, sometimes it's like, I want to figure out what the problem is so I can solve it so we can move forward. This isn't always a discipline problem, it's a capacity problem.
Mhm.
And I
Yep.
think there's a mismatch in reality and what your capacity is. What do you think about that, Haley?
Absolutely. Like, I'll relate this always back to like 2 months ago when I was moving, dog, all this stuff. If you guys have not been invested in my journey of this big life transition for me, go back and watch some of those or listen to some of those episodes because we made it out the other side, guys. This is our comeback series. This is our
Comebacks.
comeback episode where now I can tell you what I have learned through that hard experience. And
Okay,
like
good.
what you were just saying about capacity, it's not so much sometimes you can't take things off of your plate in that present moment because it's like I was moving, like I can't just take that out of my life. Like I can't just give my dog away. I can't just like go back. You know what I mean? So I think it was more so allowing time to just progress and the controllables that I had, for example, like taking on more clients, like I could just put that on a bit of a stop, like how much I work and things like that, and allocate some time towards things that are a little bit more prominent in my life, like the moving and the dog and taking care of all this other stuff. Right. So I think focusing on the controllables was such a big thing for me, especially being in that point where I think the laziness comes too when your brain is so exhausted from thinking about things and doing things. And you're like, I don't even want to think about how I can get myself out of this. Right.
Mhm.
So just taking away some of the things that you have to do so you have that mental capacity to think of an exit plan because it's like, okay, I know this is not maintainable. I know this is not sustainable for me, right? But I have adapted to that stress. So now that I've been in this for a few months, everything's a little bit more mainstream. You come up with systems, you learn, you grow, but it can be really enticing to like completely quit and give up in that moment because you're feeling discomfort. Where I feel like you just kind of have to go through that discomfort and just be okay with feeling a little bit off for a bit, reducing your capacity so you can think of ways and systems to optimize so you can better handle the stressor or that new stressor of your life, if I'm making sense.
Yeah, and I like that you threw in the timeline or roughly timeline. You said it's been a couple months. Has it been 2 months or not quite?
January, January, February, March,
It was January,
3,
okay.
3
Okay,
months.
it's been 3 months. Oh, man, that flew by. I was thinking it was more
Yeah,
recent than that.
no.
But I think that that's important to hear because the timeline is gonna be different for everyone. You referenced that for when you're trying to make progress, but also when you're trying to recover from either just high stress, nervous system overload, or if it's like full-blown burnout, that recovery time's gonna look different for each person, and I think the trap is to be like, "This'll be through this in a week." Okay, possibly,
Or the
but
weekend. I just need a
yeah,
weekend to myself.
I just need the weekend, which is possible in some scenarios depending on what you else you have going on and how intentional you are and all of that. I think there is, we can filter in these mini rejuvenations that are going to help for our long-term sustainability in our capacity. But if you're so far gone, it's probably not going to take that short little amount of time to get back on track, especially if a lot of these stressors are still there in your life, like you said. It's interesting. My 13-year-old we were just having a conversation after school the other day, and I don't even know how it came up, but she was asking me about if things feel harder now that all of the kids are in school, like her and her brothers and sisters, right? Versus when they were little babies and toddlers. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting question because in one regard, there were less commitments back then. Like there was less like tracking how everyone's doing with their homework and making sure that they get to this sporting event and they're going different directions. And there's a huge amount of coordinating. There's a lot of scheduling I find in this phase. But I do get more I do have more often where I sleep through the night. Whereas
Mhm,
when you have little babies and toddlers, you're like never sleeping. You don't have that option, right? So I feel like it's easier, kind of, but it's just different. So I think it probably depends on your personality. Like I'd take having to do more scheduling and more lists over not sleeping. However, baby snuggles are the best. So it's weird, right? There's pros and cons. And
mhm.
then I know people say, my oldest is 13. People say as they get more of them into teenage years, that can pose different challenges, obviously. And I'm not there yet, so I can't really speak to that. But, anyways, it's just kind of interesting when you were saying you can't always remove, and I'm not saying kids are just stressors, they're such a joy, but they do increase the complexity of coordinating everything. So that does tie into your capacity when you're looking at if you only have much energy, then what are you going to do with it and where are you going to allocate it? So it's figuring that piece out. And so I was thinking about this and going, okay, if, like you said, you have certain uncontrollables, what are your controllables? And then what are you going to do about it?
Mhm.
And if you're looking at what burnout actually is, which we did talk about quite a bit in that other episode, but just brief synopsis would be like, okay, looking at chronic increased cortisol, nervous system overload, your body starts to shift into conservation mode. I'm struggling with some of my words today. See, I didn't sleep well. Let's
I can
try that
tell.
again.
We can all tell. Just keep going.
Thanks. But at least I look good. Check me
You
out on
look
YouTube.
fabulous. You look
Thanks.
so on point, yeah.
Oh dear. So your body shifts into conservation mode and then that energy, motivation, drive, all of that, it starts to decrease. And I feel like that can spiral really quickly. So if you start noticing that, and sometimes it's hard to notice it in yourself. So if you have someone close to you, maybe mentioning or bringing up, like, are you okay? Stop, take a look at it and go, well, what can I do differently? You're gonna look at your workouts. Are your workouts feeling a lot harder than they used to, and they're not all that different? Does your fat loss stall if that's something that if you're in the middle of a fat loss phase? Do you start to get brain fog and feel that tank in your motivation? You start becoming less consistent. We also did an episode on wired and tired. I think that's another big sign. You get that midday crash, you start dreading things that you used to enjoy, and then the inconsistency despite trying just starts getting worse. I think that's when you're really into it.
Yeah, yeah, all of things that I have felt in that phase of life too.
You've
Um,
totally been there. So,
yeah,
how
well,
do we
everyone's been
reset
there.
some of this without losing progress?
Yeah, everyone's been there, and I think it was more for myself too, and I think a lot of our listeners listening are, like, high achieving women, they're very driven, and the problem comes when you start to audit what you need to take away, because essentially, like, especially for myself 3 months ago, I'm like, "Everything's important." Like,
Is it though?
I had a certain standard I had for myself, which was unrealistic for that time of life because like when I was living alone, like I just had to take care of myself. I was very like selfish, right? I could have two like very high performing jobs and like actually deliver to them because I only had to worry about myself. And now I had like two other beings that I'm like, okay, now I have to like navigate this whole thing. But I was like, I still need to do my content. I still need to make a YouTube video every week. I still need to edit it. I still need to manage my team. I still need to manage my clients. I need to sign on 10 clients a month, blah, blah, blah. And all of these KPIs that I was still trying to keep up with when I had so much overloading in my personal life. So I had to be very, very honest with auditing my energy, not necessarily like, oh, this is no longer important to me, but it was the only controllable that I kind of had leeway with. Workouts, client retention, and like client signing on clients and taking on more workload was the only two things that I had real control over. Still very important to me, but I had to like be very honest with myself of like, okay, I need to put a boundary on this because if I don't put a boundary on myself right now, it's going to end very badly or it's not going to improve. And like at the end of the day, why are we doing all of this stuff? Like, if you feel so crappy, you're not sleeping, you're not like the relationships in your life are not flourishing and things like that. Like, what is it actually for? Like, what's it really worth? You know what I mean? So, I had to be very honest in one, auditing my time, what's draining my energy, what are my controllables, and actually like make a hard decision to either scale back, stop, or put a boundary on. So that was a massive thing that I had to do. So a tangible thing that you can do as well is I do this with my clients quite frequently is a time audit, especially when or an energy audit, especially when they're feeling overwhelmed and they have a bunch of stuff going on. Just like how are you spending your time in the day? Is there any time in the day realistically or like where do we need to take things away, delegate, maybe say no to or maybe like not now, but later on kind of thing. Setting micro boundaries. So, like I mentioned, boundaries with myself of like what my capacity really is and being super, super honest. And like to your point, reframing too. Definitely had thoughts of like, you should be able to handle this. I like should myself to death. Right. But kind of reframing what that was and what the time of my life was and my priority shifting and having that be okay. Cause essentially, like, I was valuing for so long the growth of my company, the growth of my business, my own personal growth, the growth of my accounts and things like that. And then you shift it and it feels very foreign.
Yeah.
It's like this feels really icky in a different direction. And it's not necessarily that it was a bad shift. It was just different and change is hard regardless if it's in the positive direction or a negative direction. So just kind of reframing that there's a lot of good also happening, not just a bunch of bad, not just a bunch of lack of, but also abundance and having that abundance mindset towards the changes that are happening. So those were my three main things that really brought me out of that. I don't know if you had any more to add.
That's huge. I love the vulnerability and like sharing your real life story because it makes me think of some of the phases I've been through that I've spent some time in reflection, but it's been kind of like chunked up when I have time to have a quiet moment to think through, okay, why are we making these decisions? And what does that look like in reality? So when you look at what are your values, right? And you go, okay, what is it that I want? What are we working towards? Who's important in my life, I think who you're journeying with, it makes me reflect on Frexy, right? My jacket company. And it's interesting because that was the piece that got let go where it was like, no, we got something needs to give. And it was hard because it's this like fun, creative dream that you're like working towards something totally
Hmm.
different. And so it was such a cool outlet and it gave a lot of opportunities for different types of travel and meeting different people learning a lot about the media side of things. And it's interesting because I was having a conversation. One, I had one conversation with my daughter and then with another friend where it came up like, "What's going on with your jackets?" And I'm like, "Okay, so we had 2 businesses, 4 children. We both do other community volunteer. We both wanna get workouts in when I look at, like, what my husband and I are both doing. We both have our massive lists always going, this mix of task and people." And I looked at it and I was like, "Well, if I delve even further into this, getting this second business really going where it's sustainable, what is being sacrificed?" And the sacrifice was the time with my children and the time with my husband. And so I was like, what are we choosing here? I wanted to have this time with my husband and my kids. And it doesn't mean that I'm not working. It's like, no, because we already have a business that has a lot going on with it. So it's like you, it's like the second job thing. It's the secondary project that you add in that you feel like, well, this is like such a prestige thing and the success and the challenge and the high risk. So that was one part of it. But I'm like, I do not have the capacity to sustain this. And even coming out of it, scrounging for more things to do because I'm like, "Oh my goodness, but we have money invested," and that scarcity mindset. And then working with you some, bringing on a few health clients was also super fun. And I always have a little mix of things going on, but
Mhm.
much less than I did.
Yeah.
And really wanting to kinda, I don't know, like, prove myself in a realm
Mhm.
outside of our clinic and outside of our family life. And John had the conversation with me being like, "Well, is it not enough? The fact that we're running a successful business and we have a successful marriage, we're still together." You know what I mean? A lot of people with through all these stresses in life don't even get through that. So that in and of itself is a big deal. And then raising children that are healthy and able to contribute to society as they grow up. Those 3 things alone are huge commitments. But in
Mhm.
my mind, it like wasn't enough. And so it's
Yeah.
interesting because it can feel like a knife to the side, right? When someone's like, "Oh yeah, I remember you you tried this and you quit or you gave up on it or something." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh." Yeah, just knife to the heart, right? But and
Just
I
tell me
still
I'm a
have
failure.
inventory sitting there that I do send emails being like, different companies trying to see if I can sell a lump sum. When I have time, I try to see if I can move some product, that sort of thing. But I finally started to let go. And in the sense of when you look at capacity and how you reallocate not only your time and energy, but your finances. Like we're like stuck in this mentality of like, we just need to earn more money. We just need to earn more
Mhm.
money, which can be true at times. But also, we were not being super smart with the money that we were already bringing in because we were like not always tracking it, sometimes being frivolous or impulsive. And we've really honed in since me not investing time into developing Frexy. I've taken that time and we've been tighter with our budget. We've been looking at where are we putting our money. We're revamping a bunch of that right now. And already we're like, we're doing okay. And we're not doing more. We're just being a bit wiser than we were. And I don't know. I just find it fascinating, like where you're putting your focus and
Yeah.
how you're attaching your identity to that. Cause I definitely was. Like, I was like, I need to have some sort of prestige or whatever. And it's like, no, no, you don't. Maybe in certain phases, depending on what your goals are. But this phase for me, I really had to stop and reassess. And I'm super
Yeah.
glad that I did in a
Yeah.
much better place now than I was 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think it all stems from that not enoughness.
Yes.
Maybe like an ingrained thought pattern or story that you have going on inside of your head that can go on in different and it can manifest in different ways too. Like for myself, way back when it was more so like the body image of it. Like, oh, I'm not enough. I'm not
Right.
skinny enough. I'm not this enough. And then it can manifest differently. Like, for example, in the business or money, or there's never enough money. But it's funny to see like the progression of that too. Cause like, you know how much taxes I paid?
I know. It's crazy.
Like, it's just highway robbery, and, like, you get to this point, and, like, I hope that everyone achieves everything they ever want just to know that it will still never be enough, and if you do not find that enoughness now, it will not nothing is external, right? And I think that, like, we say this all the time, you're super adaptable, so you adapted to the Frexy, you adapted to all this, and then you've now adapted to maybe, like, letting that go, right?
Yes.
I think it goes in both ways. Like you can adapt to the stressor that you put yourself under, and you can also adapt to a different identity that you can adopt letting things go. And,
Yes.
there's a
And
book,
having
what's
an
it called?
openness, can I add that in? Like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm still sometimes letting things simmer. I'm like, I'm open to if there's an opportunity that just like presents itself,
Mhm.
I'll probably jump on it, right? Like, can I sell them to a different company or whatever? But I think we can do that too. It's like not being so attached to the outcome and just being like, you know what? It's okay to give time and space and perspective.
Yeah.
It's a really hard thing to do, especially if you're the type of person who needs to be or wants to be affirmed a lot. That was something for me with the social media journey where the biggest decision for me to really pull back was I was like, I want to know that I can live my life, provide for my family, work in my business, in my local community, and not feel like I need to be affirmed. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's bad if you're on it or you're doing it or you're in it. But I think we all have to do an internal look and be like, is this affecting my psychology too
Mhm.
much? And for me, it was. And I was like, I need to just be like, you know what? There is a little bit, is it too all or nothing? Possibly. I'm now at a point where I could probably be doing it again and not be so attached to outcomes and affirmation and all of that. But yeah, it's just interesting the journey of it and thinking through whether it's something that's important to you.
Yeah, 2 major things that came to my mind is intention and morals. Like, why are you doing something? And then also the intention behind it. Like, for example, content and things like that. I was definitely more that side when I first started. I'm like, I just need to go viral. I don't care
Yes.
how, I don't care why, when, whatever. Now I'm at a point where it's like, and I think it's a lot of rinse and repeat and repetition. And I've read a book called The Dip. I don't know if you've read that
No,
by
haven't.
Seth somebody, and it's kind of goes over like when do you need to stick it out and when do you need to quit? And knowing those because there is going to be times where you have to let things go because it's eating into your maybe personal life, your relationships, it's going against your morals, and then there's going to be times where you have to kind of stick through the hard times.
Yeah, persevere.
Where, like, for example, I'll use the example of my content creation kind of journey. Like, I've always really loved the creativity of it. Like, I absolutely freaking adore the creativity, and it doesn't feel like work whatsoever to me, editing all of this stuff. And so when I was first starting, I was like, I need to get this perfectly. I need to get virality, all of this stuff. And now I'm more so like, how can I serve people, like, other people?
Yes.
Is my content serving other people? Is it creating value for this space that I'm very passionate about? I don't check. I post almost like every day. I'm at the point now where I'm like, okay, I can increase my capacity for that. I don't ever look anymore. I'm like, post, ghost. I'm going to go on with my day. Whereas, like, at the first, I was like, always checking. Did I get follows? Did I get likes? Do people like this? Are people hating on it? Like, so attached to how people were responding to it and not really knowing like what my intention of it was. And it was like all this chatter and noise coming from the outside. So I think intention and your morals too are such a massive thing. Not necessarily like I say this a lot with like eating disorder and things like that, where it's like people can view tracking or macro tracking as like, oh, that caused my eating disorder, where it's like,
Right.
no, the intention behind it. And so like creating content isn't like you can kind of make it vain and you can make it like a very large part of your reassurance, or it could be used for something else. And I think intention has such a massive thing behind that.
Yeah. And it's kind of like the choose your hard thing when you're
Mhm.
the examples that I was giving, it's not like, "Oh, this was all too hard, so I'm just quitting it all." It's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I was doing 5 hard things, and now I'm doing 3 hard things," or
Yeah.
whatever. It's actually still more than that, but
Yeah.
if we're just going in, like, big chunks of things.
Yeah.
And then all of those splinter out into different levels of what is needed. And so
Mhm.
I use the analogy of the rocks, the pebbles, and the sand? Did I tell you that one?
Possibly
I don't
in past
know.
episodes.
Yeah, I don't know if I said it no, it wasn't last episode, but I might have said it on another episode, but it's like these bigger commitments we have is like the rock. How many rocks do you have in your jar? And then what comes with those rocks is these pebbles, right? So it'd be like, okay, the big rock is running our clinic, but the pebbles are our staff and our training and our follow through with patients and our orders and our restocking and our CE credits. Those are all these pebbles that come with this big rock. Then what happens? So you've got rocks and pebbles in there for every single commitment that you have. There's like the overarching big thing, and there's all the little things that come with it. Well, filling in those gaps is the sand. And the sand is what leaks through and starts to take over very easily. And those are all the things that you haven't actually committed to. So I have committed to putting together this training day for my staff. But what I haven't committed to, but I might just assume unintentionally, is becoming the emotional stabilizer for all my staff. Well, that's not my job, but I could easily become that. I could easily say, oh, yeah, I can pick that up for you. I can go do this for you or that for you. And I get it where it's like there are times when if I have time and energy, I want to be charitable. I want to be someone who's there for other people and who's available. But if you overextend that, that's where it starts to feel like, oh, the sand is coming above my head and now I'm below the surface and I can't do this. It's suffocating. So I think that that is a big thing to be aware of when you're looking at a commitment. Because if you say yes to being on some committee, well, you better take a hard look at all of the other little pebble commitments that come with it and then where the sand might start to seep in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because there's all those little micro things. And I think it's super, well, not so funny, but like interesting when like I have a lot of people who are like, oh, I wanna be a coach. I wanna change the world. I wanna do all this stuff. And it's like, well, once you open a can of worms, then you realize, and that's why a lot of people quit on their health journeys or like in business and things like that, is because they open the can and they see the outcome that they want. And then they don't see all of the little things that come along with it and the emotional roller coasters that come along with it and the failures. And then you need to quit and throw this away. And then you need to start something new. You need to do all this, that, the other. And so that's where people lose steam because they don't have a realistic expectation of like what this journey is actually going to take. And same thing goes for burnout or when you're recovering from it. Like have a realistic expectation of what the like benchmarkers are, right? If you're coming from like months of overcapacity and burning out, it's going to take some time for you to, kind of like delegate out or recover your nervous system and things like that. Like for myself, it took 3 months because I was like, I don't really know how I'm going to do this. But then you take one day at a time and things become a little bit more clear. But yeah, just realizing that if you have this overarching goal, you want to recover from the burnout, you want to like change the story going on inside of your head, it comes with all of these other things that will kind of, show up and just have a realistic expectation of what that is going to entail. And like, again, just to our point of letting go of the timelining, letting things kind of settle and being ungoshly honest with what needs to leave your life. And that just comes back to your morals and intentions with it, right?
Yeah, honesty and ownership. This is a golden nugget, I think, that everyone needs to hear. Reduce intensity rather than reducing consistency. Before you reduce the consistency, reduce the intensity. And I
Hmm.
think this can apply across the board for workouts, for career commitments, for community commitments, etc. Is if you are in this phase, how we are resetting. If you've already identified either like the beginning signs of burnout, or if you're right deep into burnout and you're drowning, either way, if you look at it and go, how do I not lose progress? You can keep your consistency, but decrease your intensity. So if we're applying it in the workout setting, it would be instead of going hard, like with like a hit workout, or even a heavy strength training day, you could just go to your walking steps. You've said that
Hmm.
before, Haley. You can still do that same time, keep yourself in your routine, but you're just going to walk today. And that's okay. You're being consistent with your routine, but you're reducing the intensity, which is going to take some of that stress off your nervous system. You can add things that are going to help you recover: the walking, the sleep, the food, making sure you're getting enough calories is huge. And I think that when we start to do this, we can recover over time, like you said, without dropping everything. And that can happen with what you said with your media. I think about it this with the podcast. It's like
Hmm.
we could be doing this show more intensely. We could be. We've been doing it for like 4 years, and it doesn't feel like it's gonna burn us out because we've just been going at, like, this consistent pace, and we're both, I think, have been surprised that the show is still growing. And we feel like we're not working that hard at it, but it's not growing at a super high volume or rate, but it's kind of like this like slow, steady, consistent growth. And I mean, if this information has been useful for you in any way, dropping a review on any of our channels or even sharing the show it goes such a long way. Like it really does. We can see the episodes. We don't see who shared, so don't worry. We're not like stalking people, but you can see if it's been shared out more, right? That more people get a chance to discover the information. And really, our heart behind it is just like, this is real life stuff. Like, let's stop sugarcoating. Let's stop curating and be like, this is what you can actually expect. I mean, obviously, we have different journeys, so it's not going to be the exact same, but I think there's so many unspoken things that people are putting questions into AI and asking,
Mhm.
what should I do here or there? And that's fine. You can get information. You can Google a lot of the things that we say. But ultimately, we're looking at where's your accountability? Where's your connection? And I think we're both really hoping that for people. I've been thinking about that because when you said, when we're asking, well, why are we doing what we're doing? And how can we help people reset some of these behaviors? And I know even I think for you and I've seen it in our behaviors as we've gone through this journey with the podcast back and forth and meeting weekly. It's been super helpful.
Absolutely. I thoroughly, like, honestly, genuinely really enjoy this time.
I
Like,
know,
it's
me
one
too.
of the best times. I really love deep conversations, and I think that's, like, an element of connection, and we have such deep conversations on this podcast. Like, obviously, it's kinda curated, like, oh, we have an idea of what we're talking about, but with, like, the stories and, like, learning a little bit more, and we can share different aspects and, like, again, real life stuff and not sugarcoating, like, here are the tips, here are the action steps that you need to do, but we're not going to walk the walk. We're not gonna talk the talk. We're just gonna, like, spew information at you and not tell you that we've failed because we so have. And I think that's really valuable to have that connection too of like whoever's listening. Just know that like everyone's a person. Like having this real conversation and connection time is so valuable, and I absolutely adore it. So,
Yes, because I think unless you actually learn to take that ownership and be like,
mhm.
"Yeah, sorry, I forgot to send you that email. That's totally my bad," or whatever, like taking that ownership instead of trying to cover it up or get all stressed out about it or overthink it. And I love the fact that we can send messages to each other and just be like, "Shoot, I we can't actually do tomorrow. Is there any chance we could record on Friday instead?" And sometimes it's last minute for either of us if something pops up with our other commitments, and we can be like, okay, cool. Yeah, no, if we can't do Friday, we'll do Monday. Like being able to not get trapped in it has to be perfectly this certain way. And how can we still get it done? How can we maintain that consistency? Now, I think for us, it's like we carved out this time the same way you're going to find it easier if you pick, I'm always working out at this same time of day. I think that does end up being easier long term,
Mhm.
but then realizing that there's going to be weeks and days when you're going to have to shift that just because realistically that's how life goes. And it's the same thing with your sleep and your eating patterns, right? I think most of us want to eat our meals at the same time of day each day, and occasionally that's going to shift. And how are you going to work through that? Especially if you're in more of a recovery phase, if you've already felt burnt out, you might actually want to take a look at your patterns and your routines. Because I think sometimes when things are too chaotic and all over the place, then a person can start to go into some of these burnout symptoms. And then in the reverse, if you're only ever super, super rigid and then something throws that off, you're easily just tail spinning and it can happen really fast. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. I always think of like extreme ends of the spectrum and then how can we kind of decrease that amplitude and be able to be more adaptable and resilient?
Absolutely. I see this a lot too with like my clients where I think that like having structure is really valuable. And I think we all should have some capacity of structure, but
Mhm.
allowing that to ebb and flow. And that the mindset behind the ebbing and flowing is where I see a lot of resistance, where it's like now they're overthinking because they have perfectionist tendencies. Maybe they're people pleasers. And it's more so that stress of the perceived negative outcome of like, if I don't work out now, then I'm going to lose all progress. And then it spirals into a negative pattern.
Yes.
That is essentially where it's causing all the stress, if that makes sense. Not necessarily you just missing the workout. It's what your habitual thought pattern and your internal dialogue of how you're perceiving that missed workout is.
Yes.
So kind of auditing how you're perceiving it as well. And like I see this a lot too of like in very routine people, they get kind of disoriented or, "Oh my gosh, I'm stressed out now because I can't like someone needs me at this time and I can't now work out and I don't have time later to do it. So now I have to skip it altogether." And then you're like, "I'm going to lose all progress. I can't work out today." And then now your chest is tight, your breath is short. And it's like, well, if you were just a little bit more flexible and you had maybe those tiered lists that we've chatted about before of like, when this happens, can we just drop down to steps? And that be our form of success, where then now your chest is not as tight. You're not as overwhelmed. Your cortisol hasn't spiked a bunch because your perceived stress isn't as much, if I'm making any sense here.
You are. It made me think back a while ago. Like I've said, I haven't been on media as much, but when I was more, I remember one of your stories one day where you had a whole bunch of things on your plate that day that you had to get through. And then you went outside and took a walk and you were just like in the sun for like 10 minutes. It was a short break. And I remember you being like, oh, who knew? Taking this little break would make me way more productive and happier for the rest of my day than just like powering through. And I feel like those little checkpoints can be huge. Like those are the day to day practical things that it's so hard to pull yourself away when you're like, yeah, but everything is not complete.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, no, I'm going to take a breath and literally just go outside, get some sun, even for a few minutes, and then come back.
Hmm. Absolutely. And that's just going to regulate yourself a little bit better to better handle it. And I think it comes down to that scarcity too, because I so relate to having like that scarcity mindset of like, used to not eat, not take a break, not do my workout, not do anything until my to-do list was done, which was so unrealistic. Oh my
And then
gosh.
it's always never done, right?
And then it's always never done, and then you're exhausted by the end of it, and then you're like, "Oh, why does this feel so crappy?" So you have all the time in the world and prioritize your list. Like I use this little Todoist, I think the app is called.
Okay.
And you can prioritize whenever I have a little blurb in my brain, because your brain is not meant to be a task holder. It's not meant to hold a bunch of information. It's meant to create and think and have like, creative thoughts. So I just write down whatever I need to do and then prioritize it. So today I need to get 3 major things done. If these things don't get done, then yeah, I might be in a little bit of a tizzy. And then there's a million and other things that could wait till tomorrow, that they're not really that pressing. So having a break and kind of just making sure that my mental health is okay, and then coming back and getting as much done as I can, but not stressing about it because I prioritize my list, makes all the difference and takes the stress out of it and makes it a little bit more fun now. Like my work is so much more fun now that there's no imaginary time clock behind my head.
Yeah, it's so true. Well, and you've said so much within that. The time scarcity thing. Also, if you already feel strapped for time, there's a few other things that could be stealing it that could be leading to more burnout, which is if you are overthinking. So you're trapped in your own head. That's huge. And then if you start to pour on the guilt and the shame, that then tanks your energy even more, right? And so giving yourself that mental freedom, I think you have now spoken to the strategic side when you're looking at systematizing things and prioritizing things. Very practical. I love that. Then also getting yourself into the mindset where you're like, you're just going to do your best and then you're going to let it go, move on. You're going to get up, you're going to try it the next day. And I know that that's hard to do, but it is doable. It takes the intention and the practice. And guess what? You get a chance to practice it every day. And if you're aware of it, it's going to get better. So
Exactly.
you can do this. Listen, if this episode like hit you in any way where it struck a chord and was helpful, send it to a friend, especially if it's someone who's pushing themselves super hard and almost like punishing themselves and feeling worse, even though they're trying to do more. This is the episode for them because we're all ready to rebuild, reset, work with our bodies, and be able to talk about this really openly and freely. This is a place where they can do that. So make sure you share it with your friend. And in the meantime, be free, feel fresh, and live on fire.